Dr. Luis Fonseca, U.S. Navy Hospital Corpsman. I spent 22 years on active duty. During my tenure on that time, I was involved in the Battle of Al Nasiriyah. Due to my actions on that day, I was awarded the Navy Cross. As usual, please do not forget that although Doc Barry is on our panel and he is a licensed psychologist and psychoanalyst, he is not your psychologist or psychoanalyst. So if anything during this episode, as we do have trigger warnings, comes up that you might seek some help with, please, we advise you to reach out to your mental health team and or your primary care facility managers. Up next will be my partner, Doc Barry.
Folks, I'm Andrew Barry, also known as Doc Barry. I am a psychologist and psychoanalyst, and I specialize in working with veterans and first responders battling PTSD and related mental health issues. And for a return engagement is the one and only David Christensen, or Christian rather. The Bjorn again Christian joke has already been told. He was a blast. Be avoided religiously. No, it was a blast to have on with us. The first time we couldn't upload them, but hopefully we can up. We're uploading to YouTube now. Um, he and I originally bonded over Tom Lahire's songs, if I recall correctly, and that was a lot of fun. So anyway, man, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead,
And
Nate.
I'm Nate Emery. I'm your grunt. Did 33 years Department of Defense. 22 of those were in the Marine Corps, and my infantry combat tours were in the Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and Mogadishu, Somalia. And our guest tonight, as Doc Barry said, D. Bjorn Anderson, D. Bjorn Christian. It's his second time on with us. Last time he was on was in October of 2022. And Bjorn grew up on a farm in East Minnesota where he did a lot of things, but also he worked for his father's construction company. And then after high school, he enlisted in the Marines, where he served from 1983 to 87. And he was a field radio operator and wireman. And back then, the MOS series was 2512, 2531. For people who don't know what that is, today that would be the 6000 series communications MOSs. After he was discharged, he ended up in Grand Forks, North Dakota after he figured out what he wants to do. He got his master's in psychology from University of North Dakota, and then went into what he says is the best job ever. He became a psychology professor at a community and technical college. And I think he's got, well, it was 22 years back then, so it's like 25 years now. And while he was at University of North Dakota, he learned Norwegian, and he spent 33 summers teaching kids how to speak Norwegian, and also about life in Norway while he was doing a summer camp in northern Minnesota. He retired as a lifeguard after 40 years of it. About half of that time, he also spent being an instructor. And then in his work with the college, he gets called out a lot to advocate for veterans, as well as talking to them about career options, and then also teaching his non-military type colleagues the reasons why vets are different in their classes than all the other students. And so, yeah, it's great to have you back on again, Bjorn. And, feel free to rehash anything that we may have talked about before, and especially, expand on that 1983 to 87 about all the stupid stuff, fun stuff, whatever it is, and your experiences in the psych world.
Well, I want to update my occupational stuff a little bit.
Oh, good.
So right after I was on the first time, the one that we didn't upload, I got a layoff notice from my college. And then I spent the next 2.5 years in a really weird limbo where I was still teaching at my college, but instead of being a full-time unlimited faculty member, I was now part-time, and it didn't affect my benefits or anything, but I was basically semester by semester. And the nice thing about my union is if there's I work in a system of colleges. We have 20 some 2-year colleges in Minnesota that are all tied together. And if at any of those colleges there's a position that comes open that I'm qualified for, I can claim it. So a year ago, I got notification for a school in St. Paul that they needed a psych instructor, but I found out I was too late to claim that, and I'm so happy about that because I would have had to move to the metro area. Nobody wants that.
No.
And then in late March, early April, another college posted a psychology instructor position, and I put in for a claim on that, and I got it. And now I'm teaching on the totally other side of Minnesota. I'm actually now teaching about 15 minutes outside of Duluth.
Oh.
And I am at a very special type of college. It's the Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College. It's the only 2-year college in the nation that is both a tribal college and a community college.
Oh, wow.
And we are hooked into the Fond du Lac Ojibwe Anishinaabe Nation. So I get to work with some really cool people. So
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
So I ended up moving last summer, and I now have a new place. This is my new office, and it's not decorated yet, but it's painted.
Yeah,
Nice.
is this your first time working with Native people?
No, when I was at my old school, we weren't directly affiliated with any of the different tribal nations in Minnesota, but we would get a lot of people from the Red Lake Reservation, which is in northern Minnesota, and the White Earth Reservation, which is still in northern Minnesota, but it's way south. But they're both geographically close to East Grand Forks, Minnesota. So I've got people from, I think we had, the last I heard, we got like at least 5 or 6 different tribal nations that are working with us or going to school with us currently.
That's got to be interesting. That's got to be interesting having psychology on one hand, but then you're also dealing with people who come from a 2 worldview. That's got to be some interesting dynamics there, because you've got traditional students and then 2 worldview students.
Yeah, and this is something I've been working with for a long time. At my old school, we had a lot of students who are immigrants and refugees. They would come up to East Grand Forks because even though they were based in Minneapolis, St. Paul, or St. Cloud, the schools in those areas were so packed that a lot of especially the medical programs, had a 2 to 3 year waiting period. They could come up to us and they could have, do 1 semester at Northland and be able to get into a program. So they didn't have the same wait. So I've been working.
Go ahead.
I've been working with multicultural populations for a long time, and I love it.
A question I have for you is, so when you first started doing that, working, with multicultural people, did you see correlations between, your previous life as a Marine? Even people don't realize it takes only a year to become, indoctrinated right into the military lifestyle. So did you see that as kind of a correlation of you had been this military lifestyle, now you're a civilian? Did it help you at all after coming from the military side to civilian side with understanding people that live in 2 worlds at the same time?
It did, because I worked with quite a few different cultural backgrounds in the Marines as well. And I also worked with a lot of people who were, when they were in the Marines at first, they weren't U.S. citizens, but were working towards their citizenship. And one of my best friends was a Canadian.
Yeah, I forgot about
He was a Canadian who decided he wanted to be a Marine, and then after he had been in the Marines for I think 2 years, he started his journey to become a citizen.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot they used to. I'm sure they still do it, but I've forgotten about that. Yeah, there was we had an Australian Marine. We had a couple of guys that were Mexican, and then one guy from El Salvador.
Yeah, we had
Were you going to say something, Doc Lewis?
No. I was just kind of saying, yeah, to let y'all know I was paying attention as well too. But I do. I mean, if I can interject now, I'm saying I do have a question. For y'all in the audience that don't know, I am actually a psychology student. So me asking this comes from my student world right now, not my Navy world, not anything like that. But Jordan, I do have a question. Talk about multiculturalism. What do you think we can do as far as leadership in the military community when it comes to learning how to lead young men and women across any branch? Doesn't matter which one it is, right? Taking into account the fact that the military, and I understand everyone out there, I'm very biased. That's what I did for the last 22 years before I became a student. So I know no other world besides the military. But the military, as Nate and even Jordan just stated, and I can attest to this too, is very diverse with multiculturalism. I mean, we're even talking about people that come, from overseas on visas. Or, is it visas? I'm not sure if they're visas, right, Nate or Jordan? But they come from, overseas on visas or whatever to join the military and then eventually get their citizenship or whatever. What do you think, Jordan? Like I was saying, with that leaders can do to be more effective and more understanding of the multicultural that does make up the men and women of the uniformed services, in order for us to I'm giving you such a loaded question, and all of my professors, and I'm sure Jordan right now and Doc Bear is like, Luis, you're asking too much at one time. I heard it, guys. But like, for us to be better effective leaders and taking into account the multicultural sensitivity.
The first thing we need to learn is to put our own cultural biases to the side. And the second is to listen, truly listen to what the other person is saying. And also let them know that I'm listening to you and I'm trying to understand. So help me with where the disconnect is. If we look at the research, and a lot of this comes from sociology, when you look at the breakdowns of the immigrant to first generation American, second generation, third, oftentimes the person who's coming in, they see their goals and they're going to do everything they can do to get it. And then you get your first generations. And I was fortunate. My father was a first generation American. My grandpa Christian immigrated to the U.S. from Denmark in 1900. And Dad went through a lot of these situations, mainly because his parents, both my grandpa would talk Danish, my grandma would talk Swedish. They could communicate with each other, but they said, we're in America, you're going to learn English. And they really didn't push a lot of their cultures, the Danish side or the Swedish side. And then here I am, I'm second generation, and I got a dual bachelor's in psychology and Norwegian. The Norwegian comes from my mom's side. And I learned a language that was lost to my family. Um, I relearned culture and so on. So if we look now at some of the more contemporary immigrant groups that are here in Minnesota, for instance, the Hmong and Vietnamese have been here for 50 years now, and their first generation children are now having their second generation, and those are the ones who are picking up the language, the culture, the cuisine. You can go to St. Paul, and there's a farmer's market that specializes just in Asian stuff, and they have restaurants and cafes and stuff set up in there, and you can get some of the best Vietnamese, Taiwanese, Hmong food um, out of these just little kitchens. And I've had a lot of friends who said that they have gone there and they're so surprised because it doesn't taste exactly the way you get in Vietnam, maybe, but it's really closely equivalent. So we have to understand where the person is coming from and help support them in what their plan is, more so than trying to say, hey, my family's been here since the Revolutionary War. You want to be an American? Then this is what you got to do. There's assimilation and accommodation, and it's not a sign of weakness for us to help accommodate while they assimilate.
I like that.
Right.
Because it shows
I
to me.
just
Sorry, Nate,
Go
to
ahead.
me, when you say that, Jordan, it's like both sides are working together to a commonality, right?
Right.
And I like that.
Right.
Go ahead, Nate.
I was just going to say for Bjorn's background and other people in the audience, Luis and I are both first generation American. So our one, at least one of our parents was born outside of the United States. So, and I didn't understand any of that. I didn't even, when I was young, I didn't know that I was raised different. It wasn't until I started going to college at 26, and I was with all the Nez Perce students and the Crow students, and I got along with them fine. I understood what they were saying, the way they would talk, and I noticed that all the white students were confused and they were having trouble in the sociology classes. And that was when I first really learned that I was raised completely different than most Americans, you know. But I grew up in a household where my mom did the same thing. Because back then, to be naturalized, you know, you had to learn English, you had to go through citizenship classes and stuff. And so she didn't speak Thai in the house at all. And so after 3 years old, I kind of forgot all the Thai. But I wish they had done what I've met people since then have done something really awesome where one parent speaks English and the other one continues the native. And those people that I've met like that, they have backgrounds in both cultures really well. And I feel like a bit like you, Bjorn. I try to find anything I can about Thailand now that my mom is gone, and you know, wish that I'd have, you know, paid more attention when I was younger and asked all the right questions back then. So I'm playing catch up. But it's kind of funny though when we talk about families saying, "Oh, my family's been here since whenever." Well, my dad's side of the family, they've been here since the Mayflower. So
Oh wow.
everybody
Yeah.
everybody's got an old story.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I experienced my American upbringing, I guess, was different. Um, so you know, I don't know how you want to consider it, right? Technically, I'm not even first generation American. I'm an immigrant. I was born a German citizen. After 2 years, I became dual citizen and I became a German and a Mexican citizen so that my mom could fly me out of Germany. Long story, you guys. This is Bjorn's story, so I'm not going to get into all of that. Um, and then I didn't become an American national citizen until I was 8. In my house, we did not speak English at all. We spoke nothing but Spanish. And I, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I was born in 1980, came to the States in 83. Um, I didn't want to learn Spanish. I would tell my mom, no, I want to be English. And my mom was like, nope. She would ignore me if I spoke English. Well, both of my parents, my mom and dad, they'd ignore me if I spoke English. They wouldn't answer me in English. And their reasoning was, and I'm so grateful now, I really truly am, was because my grandparents, my aunts and uncles that still live in Mexico, I need to be able to communicate with my family, you know, and I will share a little bit about this. The first time I ever felt any type of, I don't know if I could say it was, if I felt it as a racist way at that time, but I did feel like I looked at my mom and was like, "See, that's why we should speak English." I was in kindergarten. I was in kindergarten, and we had a parent-teacher conference, right? And my teacher, were my dad was stationed in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, back in the 1980s, and she was a white woman. I still remember this conversation vividly to this day, so it must have been that impactful, right? Um, Looked at my mom and says, "You are not raising your child properly," or something like that, right? He knows very little English, and he's going to be behind if you don't, start speaking nothing but English. I remember my mom telling my teacher at that time, like, "No, my son will speak Spanish because of X, Y, and Z, and he comes to school to learn, English, math, blah 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 blah." So to me, my story was kind of different in that aspect, right? And I grew up, not like Nate, where I felt like I lost a lot of my heritage or tradition, or I would say my connection to it. Like, I was raised still very much embedded in it. And at 45 years old, I consider myself a very proud American, but I'm also very proud that I'm from a descendant from Mexicans, and I have a very great history and lineage and culture that comes with that as well too. And that's why, Jordan, when you said, what it takes for us in as far as either leadership or just in our world, right, is to have a little bit of accommodation, while people are assimilating, and that brings us together. So I know I rambled, you guys. Go ahead, Doc Barry.
Regarding how to deal with a patient who is of different color, different culture, do with this what you will. Here's how I handle it. Say, I am listening to you with the ears of a white man. Okay. You're going to have to tell me all about your culture, where you're from. In short, you're going to have to tell me what it's like to be you. And that seems to get their attention when I do that, and it opens a lot of doors. That's just how I do it.
No,
Yeah,
and
that might
ahead.
be good. That might be great advice for practitioners who don't have a background in the military to do the same thing.
Mhm.
Go ahead,
I
Doc.
I think that's a great um framework just to get to know someone in general, right? Not necessarily saying, I'm looking at you through the eyes of a Hispanic man, or a white man, or a, trench or whatever, right? It's like, hey, look, I'm looking at you through my lenses, right? Which are gonna be different than yours. Tell me, who are you? Who's Jordan? Who's Luis? Who's Nate? Who's Andrew? You know what I mean? And I think that's a beautiful way to start off wanting to meet anyone, is getting to know who that person is inside, right?
one of one of the changes that the pandemic did for me in how I work with my students is, we shut down everything, and suddenly I'm going from teaching all my classes in the classroom to now being online. And I used to tell my deans, I'll teach online when you pry my classroom from my cold dead hands. And you know I just did not want to do it. So I told my students in our revised syllabus that we were going to practice grace, and that is a statement that I still have in my syllabi. Is we practice grace with each other and ourselves, and I think that's another big part of it. Is we got to allow for people sometimes to make mistakes, but help recover from them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because, like you say, we're all going to make them, right? None of us
Mhm.
are perfect in this world. So, Jordan, what is your favorite subject to teach in the psychology world? It's like,
I so you get a group of psychology instructors and professors together, and they will all say the same thing. They hate teaching intro or general psych classes. See, that's my jam.
oh,
I
nice.
love I love being that person who gets to introduce this field to new students and say, look at how magnificent we are at doing these things. And then look at how stupid we are when it comes to things like this. You know, why is it we get fooled by these simple illusions? Because of the way our brain is organized. So, yeah, I love teaching that first class and being that person that hopefully sparks a passion for my students to go further.
Yeah, absolutely. Doc Barry says this quite often when I talk to him about my professors, right? And you have great ones, you have good ones, and then you just have some that like, oh, I just need to make it through their course, right? But it sounds like you'd be one of those that is very enthusiastic about it. And Doc Barry always says, enthusiasm breeds enthusiasm. And I tell you, when I have those professors that you just see the love and the passion for wanting to have a good product, put out a good product per se. I'm texting Doc Barry more often than none, and but yeah, it's great. I love to hear that.
I also kind of jam on developmental psych, um, because I find a lot of joy in watching as children develop. And being that I worked in a camp setting for so many years, yeah, I don't have my own kids, but I'm an uncle to probably a couple thousand, and I get to be the uncle that I get to and get the kids all wound up and then say, "See you later." But I just love watching as children are at those different developmental stages and how they start putting their worldview together, how they start figuring out the puzzles, and then they get to the teenage years. I am personally of the opinion that from 12 to 15, we put them all on an island, let them do the Lord of the Flies thing, and whoever survives, we bring them back into society. And
Yeah,
then we, turn them into young adults.
yeah. Talking about that, and it's funny that you mentioned that age range because the more I've come to learn about uh the developmental process, right, and the different stages all of us go through. um I'm in the belief now that people are gonna not like this, that I don't think kids should have any type of social media till they're about 16 to 18 years old. Keep them away
Amen.
from keep them away from all that shit until their brain develops, until they have a lot more, cognitive understanding of the world around them. And I think I wouldn't say it would solve a lot of problems, but I think it would help the curve a little bit.
Yeah,
And
on that, I get people at church asking me that question all the time. When's the right time to let your kids have social media? And I tell them, don't think of it as giving your kids access to the world at a young age. You're giving the world access to your kids at a young age. And if you think about it that way, you start thinking about all the safeguards that aren't there.
100%.
I had a student ask me that question. No, when was that? About a year ago, maybe. I think it was about a year ago, and I said, "Think back to when you were that age. How stupid were you?" And she kind of looked at me and went, "Yeah, I get you. I get you."
It's fascinating how the mind works, how it develops, and it's also just so fascinating, all of the advances we've made as far as either technology or just trying to really understand the human brain, the development process of it, you know, how we all individually construct our reality in this world, right? And what that really means, you know, and I've just, you know, I've just had such a blast. And I mean, I'm barely even halfway through through where I want to be my end goal. But I've even now, I mean, when my wife asked me, you know, I'm like, man, I enjoy it. I love learning it. I love when I go into class and our professors are there just to facilitate the talking points. They're not really there to tell us how to think or tell us how, you know, to do X, Y, and Z. Because as you know, most of us here know, you know, the human brain isn't always a black and white, you know, thing, right? Um, and so I love that. I really have enjoyed it. So, hey,
I
Doc.
always love the people who say, you know, we shouldn't be sending so many kids to college. We should have them go out and do trades jobs. Well, where they can get the training for the trades jobs? You know, it's going to be an apprenticeship program or a trade school. It's school. You're going to have someone there who's teaching you how to use your critical thinking skills. And yeah, I'm in the liberal arts, but the last thing I'm trying to do is indoctrinate anyone. I'm trying to get them to see things and start using their skills and abilities to figure out, okay, what if I disagree with this person? In my developmental psych classes, when I'm talking about childbirth, I I always piss off the women because I'll tell them the pain of childbirth is all in your head. I mean, pain is perception, right?
True.
And perception is something that we learn. So since we learn it, we've been enculturated to believe that childbirth is going to be painful. And it goes back to the Abrahamic texts, you know, back to the Garden of Eden. So if you've been hearing for how many thousands of years that you're being punished for Eve's original sin, so I tell them about the cultures that aren't from that same faith background, who childbirth is just another day, and they go right back to work and have no problems.
Very true. A lot of cultures like that, huh? Still.
Yeah, and I had I had a young mother tell me, "How if I kick you in the balls?" And I said, "Well, it's going to hurt, but that's still perception. It's going to be in my head."
You know, go ahead, Doc Barry. I saw you had your hand raised earlier.
Yeah, that's fine. Getting back to the idea of how to pass information on. Um, David and I compared notes about this moons ago. I taught community college for 9, 10 years, and it anticipated how I do what I do for advocacy now. I'm a storyteller. And when I was offered the opportunity to teach, I thought to myself, you know, "W- how do I even go about doing this?" And I said, well, wait a minute. I would rather teach this material the way I wish somebody had taught it to me. So in every Psych 101 textbook, there are the key terms that are usually in italics or bold or underline and whatnot. And so I would pick out each one of those key terms and tell a story about it. And if I do say so myself, it was a lot more effective than the dry, pedantic, academic presentation of textbooks. There are some that are worse than others, but they tend to really dehumanize psychology by reducing it into words and just dry, tedious talk. Um, that's the first thing. And the second thing is developmental, right, David? Um,
Yeah,
Development presupposes that it's a constantly moving target, which means we are not static. We are not static unless we're dead, of course. Now, that idea factors very nicely into the old saying, you can't step into the same river twice. Well, somebody finally figured out you can't step into that same river even once. And why? Because the water is always moving. And when you're doing sessions with patients, it's constantly moving, especially if you're trained analytically to listen to not what they are saying so much as how they are saying it. It's a, it's a constantly moving target. And Luis, you and I have spoken in the past about, and I'm sure you've heard this too, David. Ours is referred to sometimes as the impossible profession. And why? Because it's constantly moving, constantly fluid, et cetera, et cetera. You never get the same session twice. You never get the same patient twice, provided you're sticking with process instead of content.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Doc. And you know, one thing that I learned. So I had to take my counseling techniques one class. I think it was the last month or the month prior. And I went into that class. Look, so okay, Jordan, I'm not trying to steal anyone. This is your story, so if you need me to stop, I'll stop. But I went into that class cocky as hell because I was a Navy corpsman for 22 fucking years. I've seen patients for out of 22 years. I've probably seen patients for 15 of those years. I know how to ask patients questions. I know how to do exams. I know how to give my assessment to my providers, give them a treatment plan. Man, when I learned that seeing a not a patient but a client or whatever you want to call it, right, a patient in the psychology world is totally different than how you see a patient under the medical model, right? Because under the medical model, we want to find a definitive diagnosis, right? Like I want to diagnose you with diabetes, one, because I know exactly what to do and how to fix you and how to, you know, and that's the key term, right? How to fix the problem, how to fix the issue. When I learned that in psychology, we don't fix shit, man. And you know, and my counseling technique course, my professor, he was great. I loved him. He was one of the ones that I talked to Doc Barry about, like, no, Doc, we had in session class and it was amazing, and this and that and blah blah blah. But I learned so much because I had to rethink, right, rewire my brain to think, all right, I'm not dealing with someone with a broken leg or someone with a cough. You know, I'm dealing with a human being that has emotions, that has those ebbs and flows, right? That has those peaks and those valleys, and and there's no fixing it, right? It's just helping our clients come to a realization on okay, if this is what you're here for, how can we work together to whatever your, I don't want to say your perfect scenario, but your beautiful picture is, right? Whatever that beautiful picture is that you want to see instead of what you're seeing right now, how do we start painting that? And so, man, but it's I could go on about it all day long, but go ahead, Doc Barry.
Well, yeah, one of the things as far as, yeah, we don't fix doodly dick, but what I do ask my patients is as they become relatively asymptomatic, in other words, the shit that's bothering them when they first walked in just isn't bothering them that much anymore. I'll look at the guy or the gal and say, hey man, did we get you through the worst of it? And that
Yeah,
seems to really get the wheels turning. And they look at me, you know, when, and you get a sense when you find yourself getting bored in sessions, they're either resisting or we got them through the worst of it. So I'll ask them that question, and it's very effective. They'll say, yeah, I think I can take it from here. And that's how basically we know we've done our job.
yeah,
I was glad to hear both of you say that because I watched a video a while back. It was a guy who mentioned for several years he would stand outside at APA conferences and he would ask his colleagues, "How many people have you cured?" And he has all these videos of them laughing at him as their response. And he said, "Oh, he's only ever had one person tell him that he cured one person."
yep, that sounds about right.
Oh, I do cure pork bellies and shoulder bacon, but
Ooh, nice.
yeah, I'm kind of multifaceted.
Dude,
Oh,
I'm not a clinician. I'm not a counselor. I am an experimental psychologist. So I always have to tell my students at the beginning of the semester, if you come tell me your problems, I can't help you. That's not where my training is.
Mhm.
And as you're telling me your problems, all I'm thinking is, how can I fuck with you even more?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't
Well,
really build a practice on that.
Yeah, well, and I tell them I do know who the counselors are, and I can get them
Yeah.
to help, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's not why I'm here.
And it's cool that you say that too, because that's another thing I've learned through my process as I further on my education in this field is to really humble yourself and know that, hey, look, just because I went to schooling doesn't mean that I am the subject matter expert in what you're coming to me with. Let me divert you to the people that can help you out a lot better than I can, because I mainly focus on this, or I mainly do this. So yeah.
Speaking of humbling, you want to know my big humble right now?
Yeah.
I signed up for a class this semester. I am taking an intro to painting class. And I haven't done that type of painting since probably middle school. I thought I never thought I would take a painting class. And then I had an opportunity to do a little demonstration last fall where I did this little 3x5 card watercolor scene of a birch forest. And I thought, holy shit, this is fun.
Hmm.
So now I'm taking an intro to painting class with the same person who did the demonstration. And I go in 2 afternoons a week. I sit down. She has us painting whatever is on the schedule for that week. We're learning the new techniques.
Hmm.
And I'm finding the same zen as I did when I was shooting my bow all the time.
Nice.
But there are times where I'll be looking at something and trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I make it look like it's supposed to? So I realize that I have to put my pride to the side and ask for help.
Hmm.
And I told my instructor this last week, and she goes, "You never seem to have a problem with that." And I said, "That's because I'm forcing myself out of my comfort zone. And I'm enjoying that feeling, not so much a free falling, but I'm doing an Australian rappel. So I'm going face first, but I'm on a rope."
Oh wow.
So yeah. So yesterday, it's a long weekend for me. I put together a standing desk with a top on it, so I now have a place so I can paint at home even,
Nice.
and I got a 3-season porch. In the summertime, it'll be out there, and in the wintertime, it's in my living room, looking out over my woods. I got 6 acres of woods now. After living in North Dakota for 38 years, having more than 6 trees in my yard, I am so happy.
Is there not many trees in North Dakota?
The campus of the University of North Dakota is considered a state forest because it has at least one tree out of the native species you can find in North Dakota.
Wow.
Okay. So in 1989, North and South Dakota had celebrated their centennial years. The North Dakota legislature had a program for landowners. They wanted to plant 100,000 trees across the state. That's less than one tree every 5 square miles.
Mm.
So yeah, there's not a lot of trees there.
Hey, I hate to interrupt the chat, but Nate, I just got 2 screens from you popped up, so I don't want it to interfere with any uploads or anything. I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Yeah, I'm
So,
seeing the
Jordan,
same.
I'm always
There's
question with
just two of you.
Let me jump off
Yeah.
again.
with there we go.
There you are. Yep,
With
down the back
with
where
you
we should be.
saying, oh,
Sure.
Nate's gone. I'm sure he'll come back.
I need profile
With-
now. Oh no.
So, Jordan, with you learning this new skill, taking this class, and you said, it's definitely humbled you. What are you learning about yourself, new about yourself during this process?
Let's see. What am I learning? I'm learning to be patient with myself. I'm remembering that I don't have to be perfect right away, even though the people around me, they have their stuff is, when I compare it to mine, seems so much better. Then I have people come over and go, I really like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also learning that, again, we are our own worst critics. But our painting this past week has been crows. And I had this one crow, and I was trying, what's wrong with this thing? Why does it not look like a crow? And I realized it's because the beak shape was wrong, and it looked like a toucan. And I turned to the lady who sits next to me, and I said, it's not a crow, it's not a raven. It looks like a toucan, but I can fix it because two can play at this.
And
I
that
knew
right
there was a
there,
pun coming in there.
and that right there is one of the ways that David and I originally bonded. So when it comes to painting, hey, David, when it comes to painting, don't put such pressure on yourself. Take it easy.
I had a new one for my in my brain and behavior lecture when I introduced neurons. I drew a neuron up on the board and I said, this is the most common type of neuron you have up there. And I said, this is a neuron. And I did it in one of those really great action movie trailer voices. And then I took the eraser and I wiped off about half of it. And I said, and this is a neuroff.
Oh, you guys, we're gonna get banned for dad jokes.
And if they actually ban us for that, all I can say is, my God, what nerve.
Right? I think we've said worse on this podcast.
The glial cell will be coming after us next.
All right, so I want to backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
Nate talked about your time in service during 83 to 87. I don't know why this thought popped into my head, but I'll ask you, gentlemen. So during that time, like I said, I was born in 1980. So I remember going to school and learning to get under my desk, right? Because of nuclear war possibly coming over the horizon. But when I look back at that, to me, it wasn't. I think people make it sound worse today than what it really was, right? Like it was just another fucking drill, like a hurricane drill, a tornado drill, earthquake drill, whatever, right? Like, but for you that was in the service at that time, how real did that threat feel for y'all during those times?
when I was in boot camp, they kept telling us that if you are dressed properly and you react properly, you can survive a nuclear blast from 1 mile away. And I started thinking, why the fuck would I want to survive that?
Right.
If it's a mile away, I'm gonna probably do the Gomer Pyle thing, like in Full Metal Jacket, because fucking, I don't want to be alive after that. But we went through the civil defense drills. Oh, probably until I was in 5th or 6th grade. After that, I don't think we ever did the under the desk things. But we did talk about it quite a bit because for me, I started kindergarten in 1970. I graduated in 83. So we're not at the height of the Cold War at that time. It's post Vietnam. I had a lot of hippies that were teachers by that point, and they didn't want to talk about war so much as um, nukes are bad. Everything nuclear is bad. And yeah, they would. We had a couple of teachers. There's a power plant, nuclear power plant, about 45 miles from the town I grew up in, and it came online when I was in second or third grade. And these teachers every weekend would be down protesting it. So that was interesting for me.
Yeah, the more I've picked up learning history, right, and actually enjoying. I mean, when I was in high school, you couldn't beat me to learn history. I was like, for what? It's in the past. Who gives a shit? And now I actually enjoy learning it. From my understanding, because of the whole Cold War era, and then I forgot what the nuclear treaty, the peace treaty signing was, but America's always been kind of wary about nuclear energy because of all the whole nuclear war, Cold War stuff, correct?
3 Mile Island really played a number on people's heads.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a nuclear disaster that didn't happen, but everybody freaked out about what could happen. And then people who were anti-nuke anyways took it and ran. And what a lot of people don't realize right now is all these data centers that are being built in the United States, they require massive amounts of power, and they can't build enough power plants. So what people don't realize, if you don't believe me, talk to firefighters that work in an area around a data center. They all have these little miniature nuclear power plants now, the same ones that we put on ships, and that's how they're
wow.
powering. Yeah.
And
Doc Barry?
speaking of the whole fear of nukes thing, I think it was just a few weeks prior to 3 Mile Island occurring, there was a very graphic movie called The China Syndrome that came
Yep.
out, and that scared the hell out of people too. So it was a 1-2 punch.
And then we also
Oh,
had a president at the time who had gone into a nuclear reactor when he was a young ensign, or not a young, he was a lieutenant, I believe. But yeah, he helped decommission a nuclear reactor that partially melted down. But that was in Canada, so.
Yeah, and also, Doc Barry reminded me of something too. So this would have been in the early '80s, if not the late '70s. There was a TV miniseries that came out, and for like a month, they were warning people that the show was coming on, not to let your children watch it. So it was freaking everybody out, and it was called The Morning After, or The Day After. And it was in the very beginning, you get this nuclear blast, and they're supposed to show you what life was like afterwards. And like Bjorn was saying earlier, it's not the blast that kills the majority of people, it's the fallout. If you can stay out of the fallout, every 24 hours you stay out of the fallout, it increases survivability like crazy. Right. And if a rain comes, then it's great because the rain will wash it away somewhere else, right? But so we had all kinds of things coming up like that. And then that's when, with there was a START 1 and START 2 treaties between us and Russia, right? And both sides were lying about how many nukes we had. Right. So the whole world is freaking out. And then they came up with this idea of the Star Wars project where we would shoot down nukes from space. And that's one of the things that caused Russia to start spending money like crazy. And it really contributed significantly the nuclear arms race to their financial collapse in 1991.
Oh, okay.
Do you mean the SALT treaty? You said START treaty. SALT 1 and SALT 2.
Well, there were also SALT treaties. Yeah, there were SALT and START treaties. I forgot about SALT.
Okay, all right. Just sounded like a misnomer. Okay, just wondering.
With the Star Wars stuff, that also brought forth one of the best movies out of the 1980s, Remo Williams.
I forgot about Remo Williams.
Can the young little boy in the room get an education on what that
Fred Ward played a New York cop who got killed in the line of duty. And then he got seconded to a governmental agency, and they came up with a new name for him based off the bottom of a marking on a bedpan, because the bedpan was made in Remo, Arkansas.
Yeah.
So he became Remo Williams. But he became like a hired assassin, and they would kill people without using non-conventional methods. So it wouldn't seem like they were assassinated, they just happened to die.
Oh, okay.
And one of the main people in that movie, besides Fred Ward, was one of my heroes, Wilford Brimley. Yeah.
And if I
I
recall
became-
correctly, Joel Gray also was in that. He played the
Yes.
Sensei Master.
Yep. I couldn't remember his name, but yeah, Joel Gray. But I became a lot like Wilford Brimley last spring when I got diagnosed with the diabetes.
Oh,
Mm.
So old fat man with a beard, and yeah.
Well, you know what? One thing that I'm learning talking about, like all these later on ailments, right? Is and if you look at it, I mean, I guess it's true, right? I mean, that's why. I mean, but us as human beings weren't really. I'm not say weren't meant to last this long, like into our 50s, 60s, 70s. But that's why we start getting so many cancers now and diabetes and all these other, ailments, because science has allowed us to live longer. But unfortunately, now all these new ailments are coming about, and it's like, well, shit, how do we treat this now too? But anywho, question.
So Nate,
Go ahead.
Nate, you were talking about the morning or the day after, where the hell that was. I have never seen it
Oh wow!
because
Yeah.
I was in boot camp when it came out.
Was that a movie?
Yeah.
A TV miniseries. I think it was like 2 or 3 episodes.
So I remember watching, if it was either a movie or a miniseries, but I don't remember watching several episodes or anything. But I remember watching them I had it mid 80s, right? Mid 80s, late 80s, a movie kind of like that. And I remember like it started off with the nuclear blast. It had the electric magnetic pulse blast, the EMP as well, that knocked out all the cars at the beginning before the nuclear blast hit. And what I remember so vividly, I don't know why this sticks with me, it was a child had been blinded by the blast. So they always had to keep them blindfolded, right? And I remember like somebody having to help people like through like a stairwell shaft or something like that. I'm not sure if it's the same one.
Yeah, there was a string of post-apocalyptic bad movies that came out based on that. Like even if you like when you talk to most people, about the Mad Max movies, people forget that the first Mad Max movie was completely different. It was before the nuclear holocaust,
Right.
and so it was, it wasn't called Mad Max. It was called was it the Road Warrior? I think.
No,
that's what it was called.
Road Warriors #2. The original was.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
And then there
Yeah.
was Beyond Thunderdome. Two
Oh,
shall
that's right.
enter.
That's right.
One will.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
talking about media and news sources where we get our information from, things like that, right? And we steer away from discussing politics, so I'm trying to not make this question political at all. But what similarities do you gentlemen see with as far as like the things that happened with during the Cold War, right? And the fear of a nuclear holocaust or nuclear war, assured destruction on both sides. that causing that fear amongst the American populace with kind of what we might be seeing now and the fear that is being instilled if you think along those lines, right? That is being instilled in the American populace today. Is there any similarities? Is it very different for y'all looking back at it now?
I always looked at it as it was something that was used as leverage, right? It, when a population hinges onto something, you can either just let them run with it, or you can use it to your advantage, regardless of what party you're in, or what you're even in your in business. You learn how to use that stuff to your advantage. And the interesting point to show you how the rest of the world was. In the 80s and the 90s, France got 75% of their power from nuclear power because it was basically free energy. Meanwhile, we were still, damming up rivers and had over half of our power coming from coal plants.
Right.
But then there's a lot of other problems with that too. Like the reason why we haven't had brand new nuclear plants forever, large nuclear plants,
Correct.
is because there's such a fear of them that when you create a new nuclear plant, you're not tied to what the regulations were on the day you were approved. You're tied to whatever the regulations are on the day that you start the thing up. So if you're going to create a nuclear plant, you're always chasing these changing regulations.
Mhm.
And people who, let's say that this is a for instance, I can't back this up with anything, but let's say you have a coal power plant, so you're from the coal industry, or you're from the hydropower industry. You're going to do everything you can to villainize nuclear power and to keep getting them to change the regulations so they can never get that thing turned on, right? And so nobody wants to invest money in a power plant that they have no idea when they're going to get a payback on. So everybody quit building them. In Washington State recently, I think in Vancouver, there was a brand new nuclear plant that sat there for like 30 years, brand new,
wow.
ready to go, never turned on, and they finally tore the thing down.
Wow, I didn't
Now,
know that.
Germany's got the opposite problem. Over the last 10, 15 years, they've been freaking out about nuclear power, and they went all in on renewable energy. They were
Right.
destroying the nuclear power plants, and now they have power problems. They can't get enough power, and now they're buying power from other countries who are producing it with coal and nuclear energy. So, we as human beings, we react to our fear instead of reflect and like Bjorn mentioned in the beginning, we don't think critically about stuff, right? We want to react to the way it makes us feel.
I like that, Nate. What's up, Doc Barry?
Yeah, we're also forgetting um, the most terrible nuclear mishap of them all, Chernobyl. Now that one, the documentaries I've seen on Chernobyl, hell on earth, uninhabitable for thousands of years. But from what little bit I understand about how nuclear power plants are designed, that was a very crude um, type of design that was prone to accidents and failure. Whereas the stuff that we make over here, for the most part, it's much more advanced, many more safeguards, et cetera, et cetera. But thanks to Chernobyl and the effect that it had, that also is yet another factor that puts the fear of God in us about nuclear power. And really, in a way, it's like comparing apples and oranges. I mean, yes, it's similar, nuclear power in both situations. However, one is nuclear power brought about by a Model T Ford, as opposed to 19, as opposed to a modern Honda Civic, where everything is balanced and safeguards and they run forever. Did that make
Yeah,
sense, by the way?
American nuclear plants are the design is a fail-safe design. So in order to keep the nuclear process going, you have to keep on cooling it all the time. And ours is designed so when something fails, it stops feeding water to it, and so it doesn't have the feedback that keeps the reaction going. The reaction slows down and comes to a stop on its own. In Chernobyl, that was an old style where it just kept forcing the reaction to happen over and over. And actually, there's been worse. And Luis, you know a little bit this. Fukuoka,
Correct. I was going to
Fukuoka,
say, yep.
that is probably that one has been kept pretty quiet for a long time. That one is far worse than the world knows. And there was another one that Russia had I want to say it's in the present day Kazakhstan, but they've got an area that's contaminated worse than Chernobyl. I have a friend who actually is been to Chernobyl 3 times in the last 2 years. The levels that you can only be there for 45 minutes at a time at the hotspot, but at least you can go there. But this other place in Russia, because how closed off the Soviet Union was at the time, word didn't get out. But I've seen interviews with the people who lived there at the time, and they talk about how many people died, and they fly over this thing, and it just looks like the city just got abandoned. But yeah.
Well, one thing that if I'm not mistaken, the actual nuclear core of Chernobyl, what happened was it melted. The explosion that everyone attests to it wasn't a nuclear blast. It was a steam explosion because, as what Nate was saying, those machines were just keeping feeding water and it just built up too much pressure of steam. And that's really what I mean. Don't get me wrong, that steam explosion, you know, wiped out a bunch of people in there and then allowed the radioactive material to leak out. But yeah, like you said, the ones in Japan were a lot worse. And those were very recently. Those were in the mid 2000 teens. I think it was 2013, something like that. It happened. But Jordan, do you have anything to add to that?
I actually had a friend who was in Japan at the time of the tsunami, who was within a half hour where that power plant was, and luckily was able to, was upwind, so was able to escape without a problem. But the stories that she tells, it shook me.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. But
Louis,
I like. Go ahead. Yeah, please.
So, what classes are you taking now?
So right now I have 3 classes left for my undergrad, and then I'm just waiting to hear from my graduate programs. I applied to a PsyD program, so I'm gonna go straight into my doctorate program, hopefully, right? Um, but right now at this moment, I am taking positive psychology, so it deals with a lot of like meditation, Zen Buddhism, things like that. Um, trying to reframe your thought process into the whole "woe is me" type of you know game that I think all of us can get into. You know what I mean?
So, kind of
And
the
and start
hippie
think,
psychology.
huh?
The hippie psychology.
Yeah, yeah. But I love it too though because I consider myself a Buddhist since about 2013. I really started practicing Buddhism. So like some of our assignments we have to do like 5-minute meditation 3 days out of the week and write about your experiences. Well, I meditate like 5 to 7 times a day. You know what I'm saying? And one of my meditations is an hour long meditation that I do every day. So it's like I already been kind of doing this. So click, click, click. But yeah, next up is I do the family, love, and sex. So that's actually a sociology course that I'm taking. And on top of that, I'm taking my senior project to finish off my undergrad. And then hopefully in August, I get accepted to the graduate program that I applied to. So
Where'd you apply?
here in San Diego, and I was telling Nate and Doc Bear this before we came online. Uh, the only reason the main reason, I won't say the only reason, but the main reason I only applied to here in San Diego was because my wife has about a year left of her doctor program. And with that, and then with just the family, um, it's really not feasible for me to apply all across the nation. And regardless of
Right.
where I get accepted to, then I'm going to pick up and move over there to go to school. So I really kind of put all my eggs in one basket. But it's called Alliant University. And what I was telling Nate and Doc Barry is I actually went to orientation about a month ago and found out that they were the first psychology college here on the West Coast. And they were actually first out of, and the main campus is still up there. They're out of San Francisco. And so they were also one of the first campuses in the nation. And I want to say they were the first campus on the West Coast to start allowing women into their doctoral programs. So they have a long history. They seem like they're a very solid, stabilized university. So hopefully, yeah.
So when you get your doctorate, are we going to have to call you Doc Squared?
Doc Square. Oh, that's a good one. D2 or 2D.
Or in my
We gotta- we
particular
gotta-
case, a paradox.
Apparently. Yeah. So, but yeah, I've been enjoying it. I love it, man. I do. I, you know, I, in hindsight, we can all say, I wish I would have done this, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, or maybe right as soon as I retired from the Navy, maybe I should have started my psychology program. I'd already would have been in graduate school halfway through that. But I think I enjoy it so much just because, not just because, but for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, mentally, I wasn't ready for this. I had to be aligned with myself. I had to be okay with me. I had to have worked with all of my inner demons, as we sometimes call them, right? All of my own struggles, in order to mentally have the capacity to take on such a challenging program. Someone that self declares, I hate reading and I hate writing, and that's all I've done for the last 2 fucking years. Is oh my goodness. Um,
So when we first got hooked up on Facebook, and I was
uh-huh.
watching you in your first years out of the Navy, going through all the different programs you're going through, um, there was one day, I don't know if I made the comment on your Facebook or not, but I think it was when you started welding class. Did you do HVAC first and then welding?
Yeah, so HVAC, welding, and then electrical. Yes.
Okay. So I think, no, it was when you started electrical. I kind of laughed and I said, next thing you know, he's going to start a sculpture studio. And it's going to be nothing but found pieces to make made into art.
There you go.
And I was loving watching your process and cheering me on the whole time.
And I appreciate that, Jordan, because when we say in hindsight, sometimes I look back and like, man, I should have started this right when I first, you know, uh, retired from the Navy. And I've spoken to Nate and Doc Barry about this too, and they've helped me reframe. I love that word. There's certain words in psychology that I just grab onto, and I love them. Bias, Doc Barry, I already know that's one of my favorite. So does Nate. And then framework, right? Uh, re looking at your framework, right? How you view things in life. Um, yeah, there was a time I was like, man, I wasted, a year and a half, 2 years, going to the trade schools, and I don't even work in that really at all. I do work here and there for people, but now, like I said, where I am now, I'm so glad that I did it because I can see so many different opportunities to incorporate all of that, with clients. You know what I mean? Um, I have so many more outlets now for myself personally than just sitting here on my bed and doom scrolling all day long on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Like, fuck it, I'll go into the garage and I'll start up the machine and throw a rod on there and I'll just make beads. You know what I'm saying? Just to do it, not because I'm creating anything, but just it allows me to escape the world and so I'm really glad that I did it. But yeah, like I said, it there's no way, looking back at everything now, there's no way that mature wise and just mental capacity wise, I don't think I would have been ready until this moment. And I'm really much grabbing onto Nate and Doc Barry's words when they tell me things like the life experience that I have will make me a much better clinician for our clients when I get there. So, because yeah, I still get frustrated. Like I said, if I would have done this getting out in 2021, that was what, almost 5 years ago, right? Shit, it's gonna be 5 years this year. Wow, 5 years already retired. Shit.
Cool.
Like, yeah, that I'd be like, well, shit, I only have like a year left. I'm gonna graduate, or 2 years left. But no, I'm so glad that I got to experience all those other facets of life. Absolutely.
And don't forget it from this aspect as well. In the future, when you have your office, the only time you're going to have to call a professional is when you have a plumbing problem.
Yes. And you know what's funny about that, dude? You want to know what's super, super funny about that is I consider myself like pretty handy. I can figure most things out. So my one of my sinks recently, like you would turn on the water, so when the water would go down into the drain, it would finally like kind of mix with the water that's trapped in the little P trap
Right,
area.
right,
You would start getting like the sewer smell, right?
right,
And
right.
and I YouTubed it and I Googled, like the pitch and the degrees on, how to make sure my pipes were right. And I tried to redo them and they didn't work. So finally I had to call a buddy that's a plumber. And I was like, hey dude, I need you to come to my house and fix this for me. He was like, Luis, really? He's like, I was like, yeah. I was like, I don't know shit about plumbing, man.
Hey, I'll make a deal with you. I don't know shit about plumbing either.
Okay.
But if you come out this spring and weld the new seats into my Jeep, I'll cook
Oh,
for you
oh, hell's yeah.
because I'm a damn good cook.
Yeah.
I always tell my students, I'm in my 56th trimester.
Oh, nice.
Which gives them, shall we say, a pregnant pause in any
Yeah.
case.
Ooh.
So, but talking about students and being students, right? What, Jordan, when you come across students, for anyone that's watching out there and thinking about, starting their educational journey or maybe switching, to the mental health world and getting education in that, what would you think is, I don't want to limit it to one quality, but maybe two or three top qualities that, because you've been teaching for a while, right? And I think you get a sense of being able to read your students almost from day one, right? You can kind of
Yeah.
tell what do you love to see in brand new students besides the enthusiasm? I get it. Every teacher wants every student to walk in there enthusiastic and, oh my goodness, I can't wait for you to learn what you're going to teach me. Let's cut that bullshit out of there, okay? Besides the enthusiasm, what's the qualities that you think make a successful student and make, and when I mean successful, I'm talking about like even those that struggle at the beginning, but at the end, they're like, see, I knew you had it in you. From the moment you walked in, I knew more than what you knew about yourself. What makes that? What do you see in that in a student?
I'm going to tell you a story about a student I had a year ago. This is a woman who's mid 40s, um, didn't go to college out of high school, has worked pretty much her entire adult life, moved from Florida to North Dakota at the age of like 45, 46, because her dad was up here and he said, hey, it's pretty cool up here. She came up and thought, I don't have a job right now. There's a community college across the river. I'm going to go to school. And so she came over, did a tour of our school, decided that the occupational therapy assistance program would be the right fit for her. And one of the classes that she had to take was developmental psychology. Came in late the first day, but sat down and was, I'm not going to say enthusiastic because she had kind of the scared rabbit look on her face at the moment, but she focused in and paid attention. Um, she wasn't afraid to ask for clarification, or if something, if if she wasn't understanding something, she was very willing to ask for help. And for me, I always tell my students on the first day of class that you can be successful in my class, and success isn't grade based. It's how you feel about your performance, and are you learning, and can you take what you learned and put it into action. um, at the end of class for all that entire semester, after class she would always have a list of questions that she wanted to ask, either from the readings from the lectures, from the class time, and they were always very focused on the material. And it was, she'd always start out with, I'm not smart enough for this. And I think after the second week, I told her that the next time she said that, I was just going to walk away. I said, I can't help you if you don't realize that you have the capacity, that you're doing better than you believe. So for me, what makes for me the ideal student is one who gets out of their own way and will ask questions and ask for help. Will not sell themselves short. If I would have went to college right out of high school, I wouldn't be here now. For me, the Marines was one of the best things I could have done, because when when I was in the Marines, I learned that I had a lot of capabilities I didn't realize. And then I took intro to psych while I was in the Marines, and it kicked my ass, but I still got a solid A. And I ran into the professor walking on campus or not on campus, but on base one day, and he said that he enjoyed having me as a student. And I went, hey, maybe this is something I can do. So I understand that struggle, that not having the confidence in your own self. I barely graduated high school, and I ended up Phi Beta Kappa when I got out of college.
Nice.
You know, so believe in yourself. Don't sell yourself short. Be willing to ask questions. Know that you're not the only one that's gone through this process. And your teachers, your professors, your instructors, they don't want to see you fail. They want you to succeed as well.
Yeah.
Just remember, your definition of success and my definition most likely aren't going to align, but that's okay.
What's up, Doc Barry?
Let me throw another log on the fire here. A good student answers all the questions. A great student questions all the answers.
I like that. You know, it's
That same student, she challenged me on a lot of things because, like I said, I'm not a parent.
Mhm.
And I have a lot of ideas based on the research and based on what I've seen people who I feel are successful parents do. So I'm a storyteller myself. I don't know if you could tell, but I use a lot of stories for emphasis in class. And there would be times where I'd make a statement, for instance, to pain of childbirth is all in your head. And she would snap back at me. And it would be so much fun because the two of us would be debating. And then finally she'd go, okay, I see it from your point of view, but do you see it from mine? So the question, you got to question.
Yeah. And something that you said to Jordan is about getting out of your own way, right? You have to eventually, as a student, you have to let down your ego, your pride, whatever it is. But Doc Barry and Nate probably can't even count anymore how many times I've told them I'm not smart enough for this. Like I feel at any moment like my big fraudulent, you know, brother, and I'm graduating with honors and I'm a high school dropout and I still feel like nope, this isn't real. Like it's eventually gonna all end. Like eventually everyone's gonna find out that I'm not as smart as that I portray myself to be or something like that. But it's really
That
getting out of
imposter, the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, especially when I failed when I failed an exam once, man. And that when I remember Nate and Barry, I spoke to them about that because that one threw me for such a loop. I was like, see you guys, I told you it was eventually gonna fucking happen. I was eventually gonna be a failure, like I've always been. And if it wasn't for these two gentlemen, man, like I don't know. I wouldn't say I would have stopped school, but I don't think I would have continued in that within that week or two. I wouldn't have continued with as much enthusiasm as I did. You know what I mean?
You know, Luis,
Wars.
somebody taught me something just before I retired. Actually, I wish I'd have learned it earlier. And so he was a guy I worked at Reserve Affairs with, but he had been former active component Force Recon.
Hmm.
And I used to ask him, like, you know, like, oh, you're not wearing your bubble, you're not wearing your jump wings, you know. And one day he's like, you know, Nate, he's like, he goes, it doesn't. He goes, having the jump wings and the bubble don't make me special. He goes, I just had the opportunity to go to the training. That's the only thing that made me any different. I started thinking about that. I was like, yeah, you know, when we tend to hold people up on a pedestal sometimes without thinking about it, right? Because they've done certain things or accomplished things. And he made me start thinking about it. I was like, most of the time, it's because that person had the opportunity. There was an opportunity, and they were ready for the opportunity when it arrived, and they took it. You know, and that changed a lot of the way I thought. And you know, I'm a lot like you, Luis. I wasn't supposed to go anywhere special. I've been a consummate outlier my whole career. You know, even now, especially. I mean, the number of people who the church, you know, find out what I used to do, and they're like, "But you've been unemployed for 3 years." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going through a change right now." But for a lot of people, that would freak them out. You know, and I'm like, I'm just learning new things in a different way right now.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to hear that you got over that, you know, and you can now just look at, okay, yeah, this is hard right now, but as soon as I learn about it, it's not hard, right? It's not like you're trying to solve some kind of mathematical, you know, I forget what you call them, conjecture that nobody can figure out, right?
Right. Right.
You just a matter of paying attention and understanding it. So that's good.
What's up, Doc Barry?
And the other thing is, well, when you were going through that tough patch, I reminded you of a conversation you had with, I can't remember the guy's name, who said, Luis, why are you going through this all alone? I mean, were you out there? Did you win the war all by yourself? And you said, oh, hell no. That's variations on the same theme. And failure does not have to define us. And as I have been, I hope, very open with you two, and same, and also David. I failed many, many times. I had to take Psych 101 3 times.
Hmm.
I had to take the licensing exam more than once, and plagued by self-doubt, as well as not having enough of an ability to learn how to learn. But also, I could hear the naysayers in the background. And I know I've told you guys about this. You'll never amount to anything. You're a piece of shit and whatnot. Well, somewhere along the line, it was hold my fucking beer. And the naysayers have gotten a lot quieter. Number one. Number two, the people we hear about, and unfortunately, they're sports figures, instead of the people who are the real heroes. Priorities in this country are really fucked up. What can we say? But I will use Michael Jordan said, yeah, I put up a lot of points. Those are the points you see. Okay. Those are the baskets I did make. The amount of baskets that I never made, you'll never see. And that number is much higher than the
Right.
number that you do see. So we have to take a healthy, hot, steaming dump of the idea that the people who are the world class folks just walked into it. No, they had to fail many, many, many times, and they
Hmm.
had to work their tits off to get it. So, which is exactly what you're doing, and it's the team that's going to get you through, man.
Yeah.
Anytime, anywhere. I've told you that 100 times.
And I also think as well too, and Doc Barry said this a few times throughout my scholastic journey is, and Jordan, you know you've been an educator for a while too. Like it's not like it was back in the 80s and 90s. Like there's gatekeepers, like well, if you want to be a psychologist, then fucking work for it. Like, don't bother me. Like, you have the textbook, right? And I did. I had that experience in my anatomy and physiology class. This was back in 2011, 12 that I took this course because I thought I was going to go to PA school at that time. And my professor, the first day of both, and yeah, I had him for both, and that's probably why I didn't go to PA school. But yeah, that was what he told us the first day of class. Like, I'm not here to teach you this. All you all want to go to medical school or PA school, y'all should be mature enough to be able to pick up a book, open the chapters, read it, and be able to produce the information. And I was, what the fuck? So I think in nowadays, you don't have those gatekeepers anymore, right? You don't have those old school thinking like, well, it was shitty for me going through this program, so I'm gonna make it shitty for you. I think nowadays, especially I would hope in the psychology world, right? The mental health world, we've learned that, yo, no, like we're gonna make it through this. Take a breath, relax, relax. You don't know this shit yet, you know? So why do you think you should have it already down on the first day? We're
Right.
gonna make it through. Would you say that's kind of the trend that you see now as well to join in the education world?
Well, especially at the 2-year colleges,
Hmm.
um, you know, I really don't like the term junior college
Hmm.
because it makes it seem like the students who go to that college are not of a significant enough caliber to make it at a real college. Fuck that. Junior college was a concept that came up, oh, I forget how many thousands of years ago. But community college, you come in, you're in a smaller community or a smaller class. You have a better instructor to student ratio. And for some students, because they're just learning how to learn and all that, you come into that setting and you have more attention. But one of the things that frustrates a lot of my students, I refuse to spoon feed them. I tell them, hey, there's a point. I can't help you anymore. You've got to make the decision
Right.
that this is important enough for you to learn.
Yeah.
I can give you all the answers, but what are you learning in that case? I had my first test of the semester 2 weeks ago, and I had a student who totally bombed it. Um, got a 51 out of 100 points. And she was in my office last Monday crying about how she's going to fail and how she's just not smart enough. And I said, okay, let's stop. Let's look at your life for the last 2.5 weeks. You're in the hospital for a week because you had an appendicitis. You get out of the hospital, you go home, and you end up back in because you got sepsis. I told you didn't have to take the exam, but you said you were going to do it anyways. Okay, so you have a bad exam. Big fucking deal. I dropped the lowest test score at the end of the semester. This will likely be it because you have shown me enough wherewithal and I forget what term I used. I had a great term for it. But you've shown me that you care enough about this that you are going to do better in the future. But you got to make that decision. If you give me this woe is me shit, get out of my office. I don't want to talk to you.
Hmm.
Because she kind of looked at me like, so she didn't drop my class and she didn't talk to my dean. So but yeah, I hate to say this, guys, but it's Andrew and Nate. It's our generation that screwed up the next generation. We didn't allow them to make mistakes. We were helicopters for them and snowplows, and we took all the put all the safety gear on the damn playgrounds. So kids bounce
Yeah.
them instead of break.
Yeah, every time I hear somebody from Gen X complain about millennials, I'm like, do you realize you're pointing fingers at ourselves? It was us.
Yeah. Yeah, we were the ones who did it. And I've said for a long time that the worst thing we ever did is took the asphalt off the playgrounds
Yeah.
because it doesn't teach kids consequences. They climb up on the play or on the jungle gym, they go too high and they fall off and they don't break an arm anymore. They bounce. They get up and go, well, that was kind of fun. We did that and we broke. And we went, maybe I should wait a while before I try that again.
How do I fix my bone that's sticking out of my arm before I go home and get my ass beat by my parents?
Or how do I explain the fact that I got a cut over my eye because we were playing box hockey and the rock came up and hit me?
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of the guys in boot camp that after they graduate, they go to sick bay and you find out they had a broken ankle or a broken arm for the most of boot camp.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you use that analogy, Bjorn, because I was actually just watching about 2 days ago a short YouTube psychology video that was actually explaining that about the whole playground analogy of our playground was a metal slide that was 120 degrees in the summertime, the merry-go-round wheel, right, that you had your friends like just spitting the shit out of it and you're hanging on for dear life, and the only thing that you had between you and the earth once you fell off those things was a slat of concrete. And now they have the cushiony padding stuff, right? So it's funny that you mentioned that because I was just watching a video about that. Yeah. So
What you said, Nate, about going to sick bay after boot camp. When we were doing pugil stick drills, I kicked ass. I'm going to admit it. That was one of my finest days. I got to a point where they had 3 guys come at me because I was having a good time. Took out one guy, was going for a butt smash or a butt stroke on the next guy, and the third guy came in and clipped me right across the throat. I didn't realize until later that I had been knocked out. But I'm laying on the ground, and then I bounce right back up, and I'm at the on guard position, and I got the pit instructor, grabbing my face mask, going, "Go see the corpsman." I went, "I'm fine." Had a bruised larynx. That was it, I was ready to go again.
Man, those pugil sticks, man. When because I didn't go to Marine Corps boot camp, so we in the Navy we don't have pugil stick fights. Well, we do, but they're like in the head. It's a little different than what you guys are used to. But I'm just making a Navy joke. But anyway, I got my fucking ass knocked out, man. The first time I pugil fought with my Marines, getting my fucking now they have the martial arts belts, the McMap belts. So
right.
The first one is tan or whatever, and you do pugil stick fighting. I got in that circle, man, and my Marine came just straight across the head, hit me here, and we had the helmet on, right? But it still has the padding. I fucking went down so hard, and all I remember is waking up to all these. I'm the only corpsman there. Doc. Well, no, there had to be a safety corpsman. Had to be another. But I just remember. I remember seeing Marines around me. Doc, what the fuck? You killed Doc. Like, holy shit! Like, I had a big ass bump on my head. I was like, what? You guys are nuts, man.
When I was at Lejeune, we did so many operations around LZ Bluebird, and I was with the 2nd FSSG at the time, so I got farmed out to a grunt platoon because they needed a wireman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the platoon I go to, the lieutenant had been on ship deployment with me, remembered that I was a pretty shit hot radio operator, and he goes, "All right, Corporal Chris, or Lance Corporal Chris, we're taking you on patrol with us." I don't want to hump a fucking radio. But nice thing about Lejeune, it's fairly flat.
Yeah.
We're going along, and we're playing war games, and we came through this thicket in the woods, and all of a sudden we got lit up. Well, the corpsman, he was a little ahead of us. His fire team that was with him, they hogpiled him. It was so great to watch, just right on top of him. But me, I'm standing there in the open, got this big fucking radio on, and I get shot. The umpire comes out and says, "You're dead." And the lieutenant comes around and goes, "Why didn't you guys dogpile the radio operator? He's now dead. You can't communicate. And go, just shoot him out." So he threw an MRB and goes, "That's magic. You're healed." So does that mean I'm Lazarus? Shut up. Keep going. Hit another ambush about 20 minutes later, and I got dogpiled. Oh my God, I've never hurt so bad in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think besides the corpsman, I think our radio operator is like the second most important person to make sure they stay alive, right?
Yep. Forget the lieutenant. I mean, they're a dime a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Oh,
question
man.
for you, David. What is, since you're you have the most up-to-date information about teaching and textbooks and whatnot. Seems to me psychology has become increasingly Kool-Aid since I got in. Now CBT is the only way to go, and everybody's saying the same thing. Evidence-based, and all the corporate slogans that go along with it, at least from what I'm seeing. What are you seeing, Matt?
I actually I am looking at setting up a new textbook for the fall for next year for my abnormal psych class. So I have 5 or 6 different books on my desk at work right now that I'm starting to go through. And I've already rejected 2 of them because that's what they're pushing. They're no longer, those authors are no longer pushing the biopsychosocial model where you got to look at the whole person. You can't just have a one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
And you know my feelings about psychoanalysis. I'm not a big Freudian, not a big Jungian, but that's me. That's my ball of wax, right? I have other avenues I'm more comfortable with, but I am always willing to say that there are different therapy models out there because there's differences between people. It's not a one size fits all world.
So different tools for different jobs.
Exactly. So there are some disorders that work where psychoanalysis, psychodynamicism work better than anything else. There's other areas where, especially if it's something like the type of depression and anxiety I work with is it's a neurobiological or a neurochemical thing. For me, therapy probably would be slightly effective, but taking my what the hell is the name of it? I just got it changed. Effexor. I take my Effexor in the morning, and not only does it help with my depression, but it helps with my anxiety, and it helps with my my migraines. So why would I need to have another type of therapy that's just going to waste my time and my money if this one works for this situation?
That's one of the things I found about you that's most engaging, and being absolutely serious. You're pretty open about anxiety, depression that you've had to go through. You're very open about it, like we try to encourage around here. And when I found out how young you were when you became a widower, that has got to be just that's got to be the Mount Everest of agony for you, at least from where I'm sitting. And you were very open about it, and I've never forgotten that.
Yeah, it's been let's see, in July it'll be 24 years, and I've had two significant relationships since then, and the first one I shouldn't have been in, cut and dry. That was a total rebound. Um, the second one, it was 10, 11 years after, and I was still comparing her to Crystal. And I think it was on I think it was a Valentine's Day date we had where I made the comment, Crystal never really liked Valentine's Day. And that was the last date we had
Oh wow.
because I realized that she didn't really need to have that baggage with her. But I've dealt with depression since I was in high school. I was bullied. Um, I was suicidal for a period of time. I can tell you what gun oil tastes like. I do believe in miracles. And now every time I talk to my VA doc, my VA doc loves me. um, she always, she has to go through the list of questions with me when we talk about my antidepressant dosage. Are you suicidal? Do you have thoughts of self harm? And I went, no, that's boring for me. I got too much I want to live for. That's why I want my medication to work.
Right.
But I understand that, especially, I love winter, but it also tends to be a time when I start to become a hermit. And this is also one of the reasons I'm happy I'm taking this painting class because it forces me to interact with other people. And I'm not afraid of my mental illness because it's just a part of me. It's not what defines me.
Yeah.
I'm a sexy motherfucker and I know it.
There you go. I love that.
We need to turn that into a reel with the song in the back.
Right.
What song would that go? What would go with that?
Jordan, if I could ask you,
Sure.
with with you becoming a widower at such a young age in your life, 24 years ago, right?
Mhm.
Back then, and I don't know if it's like this till to this day. I honestly don't personally know any widower. I know widows, but I don't know any widower in my personal life. You're the closest person I know as a widower. Was there any? Did you feel like you were seen or treated differently than if you were a widow, a female that had lost her husband back in those times? Like with support, mental health, anything like that, or
So Crystal died between my first and second year teaching full time.
Okay.
And when I got back to campus in the fall, my college president had me come to his office. It was during in services. Had me come to his office, and he had a whole package of different resources where I could reach out to get help. And that's one of the things I love about working in the state of Minnesota is we used to, at least, we take mental health care pretty seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And through my work area, my work, working as a employee of the state, we have a number of resources that we can tap into. But this was right after 9/11 and right before we started ramping up for all the fun stuff. We were doing the stuff in Afghanistan, but it was still fairly small. But once we started having all the different reindeer games going on everywhere, it became a point where, sure, I had lost my wife, but she didn't die in a war. She didn't die because of terrorists. Sure, she died because of incompetent people at the hospital, but look at this young lady over here whose husband was blown up by an IED. So after I broke up with the first person, I did feel at that point, okay, I need to reach out. I need to get some help. I called one of the state resources that they had listed. And I talked to the guy on the phone for 20, 25 minutes. And he goes, well, how long ago did your wife die? And I said, 2.5 years ago. He goes, dude, you're not over it yet? I took a deep breath and went, fuck off. Yeah, the grieving process is so personal for everyone.
Yes.
And I have been told by numerous people who I thought were good friends, that I grieved Crystal way. And my mom died right. I was out of the Marines, home after my EAS, 3 weeks when my mom died of a massive heart attack. I was 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I had this span where every 5 years something shitty would happen. Mom dies, grandma dies, flood in 97, Crystal dies. They're all spaced out of 5-year spans. And it was like I'd just be getting good again, and all of a sudden, hey, look at him. It's time to kick him down again.
Yeah.
So, but get up to right when we had our first talk, and I think we talked on a Sunday night. On Monday, I got the letter from the college saying, yeah, we're putting you on layoff. And I was like, oh, man. Oh, I guess it's a year that ends with a 2, so it must be a time to fuck with me. not just fuck with, but fuck me.
Yeah, yeah.
So I got the academic weenie instead of the big green weenie.
That's
So
the thing
there,
about it's a tough thing about life, isn't it? The longer you live, the less likely you are to get through it unscathed.
Absolutely.
so I had help initially, but when I tried to use the resources, because there were so many other people at that time who were younger than me, who had other reasons for why they were now widows. A lot of people just forgot that there's something, there's a, what's the word I'm looking for here? There's an empathy that we need to give to both sides.
Yeah, there's more than one kind of hurt.
Yeah.
Weird.
So when my mom died, my dad met another woman within 8 months of mom's funeral, and it caused all kinds of shit inside the family. They said for a long time she was just interested in dad because dad had a little bit of money saved up. He had his farm. We had he had a pretty good insurance settlement at the time. But dad was doing pretty well, and she was just a gold digger. Um, I was his best man at his second wedding, and I still have cousins and aunts on that side of the family who were saying things like, "Oh, I give it 2 years before they're divorced." At Dan and Julie's 25th wedding anniversary, Dad looked around this group of people, and about 6 of those people were there. And Dad goes, "So, I just want to read something here." Well, pulls out a letter that had been sent to him back in 1988 or 89. And it said, "Dear Lloyd, you're making a mistake. This is going to end. You should probably get out now while you still can." And my dad goes, and you read the who sent it, and you looked right at that person. It was my mom's sister. Um, Looked right at her and said, "I just got one thing to say to you. Fuck you." Dad never dropped F bombs. Very few and far between, but that was one day. He just looked at her and went, "Fuck you." She left.
Everybody deals with their trauma and grief differently. Everybody gets over it at different speeds, but somehow everybody thinks they're an expert on everybody else's pain.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, when you had initially lost Crystal, and you had gone to seek some some advice, some help, some counseling, whatever you want to call it, um, and then in your own mind you started making up, I don't want to say excuses, but maybe for lack of a better term, or maybe you were comparing your trauma to other people's trauma and why you weren't worthy of getting help at that time, and you felt other people were more deserving of you. um how do you look back now at that experience? Do you wish that you would have maybe been more, and I get it, right? You can sit back and be like, well, Luis, look at me, I'm fucking doing great now, like what would difference would have made? But I'm asking maybe, for someone that's out there, because your story's also not everyone's final story either. There's a lot of our, you know, human beings, right? Veterans, military members, first responders, just people in general that will play that comparison game, right? And say, well, no, their trauma's more worse or they're more deserving of the help right now. And then we end up losing them. They don't make it. In hindsight, do you kind of wish you would have spoken up for yourself a little bit more and it maybe would have led you to a road of healing a little bit sooner? Or is it just like, you know what,
I,
Luis, it was what it was, man?
um, this is something I had a hard time doing, even as soon as recent. There, that's the word I'm looking for. Something I've had a hard time doing my whole life is advocating for myself.
Mm,
Um, and is part of the culture I grew up in. We were taught from childhood that you don't wait for others to ask, you just start helping.
right.
But it's a sign of weakness if you yourself ask for help.
Yeah.
And that is very much, that's such a Scandinavian to the core type mentality. Um, so when I reached out to get help, because I was finally to that point where it was affecting my work, it was affecting my personal well-being. When I reached out and I got shut down, what I should have done for myself was to try again through and find a different provider or a different person to listen to
Mm,
me. And that's the hardest lesson I took out of it. I have coworkers who saw me through that whole time, but they're not trained for it, and there's only so much I can dump on them
mm-hmm.
before they start putting up barriers to me.
Yeah.
And I did lose some friends because of that time in my life. Um, but I didn't advocate for myself. So, yeah, having that pity party for yourself, that feels good for a what? Never. And while you're in it and you're wallowing in it, it takes so much to see that there is ways out. And for me, it was actually an ice fishing trip with my dad.
Mm,
We were he had never fished on Lake of the Woods up on the Minnesota Canadian border. And my youngest sister and I, we for Christmas one year, we bought him a weekend trip. And since I was the only one in the family who liked fishing and wasn't afraid to go out on the ice with Dad, I got to spend a weekend with him, just me and Dad. And I think it was about halfway through the first day, he had just pulled a walleye up, and he was looking at it and said, "All right, that's a keeper." Tossed it in the bucket, put a minnow on, threw it down the hole, and he said, "I just got to say this. It's time for you to snap out of this shit." I kind of looked at him. What are you talking? And he goes, "I understand you're grieving. I understand you're hurt, but you got to start pushing for yourself because you're not healing. You're just staying wounded."
oh,
I was like, "Fuck, fuck." And
wow.
then he outfished me. he we went home the next day. So let's see, from Grand Forks to where my dad lived was 4.5, 5 hours. So I drove down Friday night. We left the next morning at 5, and we drove 6 hours north to the lake, which is from Grand Forks. It's only 2 hours. And on Sunday, I drove back to drop Dad off and then drove home. And the best part about it was the last 2 hours on the way back to Dad's place, we were driving in a snowstorm, a heavy snowstorm, where I could not see where the road was. And Dad fell asleep. And I'm driving his baby, his Cadillac. And I thought, okay, Dad must trust me enough to feel safe that he can sleep. And he wakes up at one point and goes, "Where are we?" "Oh, I know where we are." Goes back to sleep. I'm like, "Where are we? I can't tell." We got back to his place. I threw my stuff in my truck and I drove back to Grand Forks, which was 5.5 hours. And the first 2 hours through the same goddamn snow. Yeah, I was like, I got back after that weekend. And I was like, what did we talk about? Did I get fish?
Yeah. I think sometimes all of us just need that very blunt, honest, kind of slap in the face, right? It's not, it doesn't come from a place of callous. It doesn't come from a place of not wanting your loved one to heal or whatnot. But it definitely, sometimes we need someone just to tell us, hey, you know what? Like, I love you. I see that you're hurting, but like man, and Doc Barry clapped on it too. I think that is one of the most greatest things I've ever heard is you're not healing, you're just staying wounded, dude. You need to fucking do something about this. Yeah. We all
That
need
hit me too.
it hit you too, Nate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll be thinking about that for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
So,
When I talk to Dad in my dreams next, I'll let him know he had an impact on all four of us.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, and tell him too if he ever hears a short little Mexican in a few years that's seen patience, and he hears that little dude tell his client one day, "Dude, you're just sitting here wounded. You're not healing." It's all credit to him.
As the father of one of my podcast guests once said.
So, but with that, you
Well,
guys, we're a little bit over the 2 hour mark. And whatnot. Is there anything before we wrap it up that anyone has any uh last burning desires, as we say sometimes in AA?
No, I enjoyed this. I really like.
Yeah.
I really like that we were so psychology heavy. Sometimes I feel like we don't do it enough. So this is good.
Yeah, it was really
Mhm.
good. Yeah, I appreciate
And
you guys letting me geek out a little bit on the psychology part. Nate, thanks for bearing with us.
yeah, Andrew, what I think this is, he's becoming a fanboy. Pretty soon he's going to be going to cons, psych cons dressed up as his favorite psychologist.
Well, one thing before we wrap up, I did want to tell you guys, at least the undergraduate program that I am in right now, the psychology department is very heavy on people not just thinking about evidence-based practicing and like CDB. They talk about DBT, CBT. They talk about all the other different modalities that I never even knew about because yes, Doc Barry, you're absolutely correct. The last 20 years that I've been in mental health for my own treatment has always been cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And it was really refreshing to learn that there's a lot more different modalities out
Yeah.
there for us to, I'm trying to not use that word help anymore, but to us assist, humans in having a better quality of life. And
Mhm.
so if there's any silver lining, gentlemen, at least from where I'm sitting at, the psychology program I went through for undergrad was very cognizant of that maybe stigma out there in the mental health world, and we're very much trying to inform us that there's all these different modalities. Do not get like sucked into just thinking one way, because you won't provide the best for clients. So
And then, there's also the idea of the kink community, what they think about CBT.
mhm.
That's just a kick in the balls.
Is it?
One more thing, David, before we adjourn. We'll we'll s- we'll we'll cut out, and don't close your browser until you're 100% uploaded. I forgot to mention that at the beginning.
Okay.
All right.
All righty.
Nate,
Well,
Doc Barry, anything, gentlemen?
and
No,
thanks for
no.
having me back. And I would love to come back again sometime.
Absolutely,
You'll
absolutely.
be
I
here.
think I think where we're ending off at can lead us to a lot different places when you come back.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyone that stayed watching us, we had a few couple people come on at the last minute. Jolie Hicks, always love to see you. The Hicks family has a big place here with two docs and a grunt.
Mhm.
For y'all that don't know, the Hicks family lost their son McCoy due to suicide while he was on active duty in the Navy, and the Navy really did fail him. Absolutely, 100%. There's no sugarcoating that. There's
Right.
nothing else. Let's call it what it fucking is, right? So
Yep.
Jolie and Mike, love that seeing you guys on here, and Dawn, great to see you come on here as well. And as well, we had Mr. Adam Conrad that was on with us this evening as well. So thank y'all for joining us. For everyone else out there, uh, one thing I took away from today is uh, first and foremost, humble yourself in every aspect of life. It will carry you a lot further than ego will. And secondly, uh, you have to be an advocate for yourself. You can't expect other people to do it. Not saying that life won't turn out good if you don't advocate, but hey, advocate for yourself. With that, love you all. Y'all have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see y'all on the next one.